I'm Evan with Hemmings. We're at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals in 2024, and we are here in the Barn Find exhibit, which is one of my favorite parts of the show. So I'm here with Ryan Brutt. Ryan is the Auto Archeologist. He puts this thing together. All of these cars are fresh every single year, so it's sort of a collection of what's the best of the best that's come out of a barn or storage or been forgotten about and sort of brought back into the world. So,
indeed.
What is the coolest thing that you found this year?
One of my favorites is this one right here. That's why it's right here in the middle. Is a 1970 Plymouth Cuda. It is originally a 446 barrel Cuda, so it had the 3 2-barrels on it on a 440. Right now under the hood is a 426 Hemi, but what's even crazier, this car was found in a yard in Minnesota sitting on a trailer. And next to it was a 69 Super Bee that the Hemi came out of. And the guy was able to buy both cars and save them.
So with meat like that on the back of the car, like in this, I mean, killer stance, like was this drag raced? Like what, do we know the story of what this car was doing before it disappeared from the world?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I'm guessing because you can see that they removed the side mirrors for weight, but there's an interior in the car. I know that there's 1 or 2 vintage pictures of the car, but none of them were at drag races.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was just for show, like it was kind of a pro street kind of thing. But you can see on the back quarter, it says Shari's Cuda in some absolutely ridiculous lighting. Now, the Cuda is pretty close to what the factory lettering is, which is just amazing. But the Shari's, I at least have not been able to find out who Shari was or her involvement with the car.
So I think, isn't that some of the fun of the barn find, is not just looking at the RPOs and what options are on the car, but also just figuring out the story of the car and where it came from and who owned it and like kind of piecing together, you know, the life of this vehicle.
Absolutely, because this is unique in all of the world. There is no other car like this. And the story, every scratch, every dent is unique. I mean, you can see the paint on the trunk. You can see where there's custom painting and it's literally just coming off in little chunks. And you're like, why was this car built to such a high standard and then left to rot in a yard? Absolutely incredible. I mean, like I said, you walk up and this is one of the most show-stopping cars you'll see.
Oh, without question. What else is in the barn find section that people should know about?
Oh man, here's another one. Right behind it, we lined it up, is a 1963 Corvette. And 63 Corvettes, you know, they're split windows. They're 1 year only, they're unique. This one, it gets even crazier. This is a big tank model. And I apologize, I'm not a Corvette expert, but it's a Z06 big tank, which is made for endurance racing. This car was bought by a gentleman who had, I'm forgetting the exact World War II terminology. He was in 2 B-17s that didn't end well. We're not sure if they were shot down or, you know, downed or whatever you want to call it, but he eventually became the service manager at a quality Chevrolet in California. And he, through his connections, heard about this Corvette being developed and coming up for sale. And he was able to buy it. And he raced it and enjoyed it. And I'm not quite sure on the history in the middle, but the gentleman who owns it now used to race, or he does race go-karts or karts with his children. And somehow he connected to the current owner, but it had been sitting in a trailer for like 30, 40 years. It was absolutely ridiculous. And he was able to buy it and pull it out of the trailer just within the last few months. And he sent it to us like, hey, I got this really weird, rare, unknown Corvette. Can I bring it to the show? And we're like, yes, does it roll? Because in barn finds, one of the issues is most of these cars don't run because they're barn finds. And pushing cars with stuck rims and stuck, but this car rolls incredibly smooth, and it is a legitimate tank. You see, it's like an old drag racing fiberglass seat in it. Fire suppression. Yeah, fire suppression. This was made, you can see, he actually has a picture of it racing.
I mean, even look at the gnawed up shift knob. I mean, the car was definitely driven for years. So
yeah.
Not only is it, you know, an as found Corvette, it's a 1 year only split window, it's fuel injected, and it's got the Z06 package with the big tank. So I mean, this thing checks all of the boxes for a killer barn.
I'm pretty sure these are magnesium rims.
Oh yeah.
Is that not absolutely ridiculous?
Wow.
I I mean, everything for lightness.
Sure, no, that makes total sense, but what a find.
Okay, Evan, we're now back at the front of the show next to the Rarest Cuda, as we're calling it. This is one that I was personally involved with. In 2021, a friend of mine, Seth Degenhart, introduced me to a gentleman that had copious amount of Hemi cars in a lean-to behind his barn. And stuck, and I do mean stuck, jammed between, I think it was a 66 Hemi Satellite and a 70 Hemi Cuda, was this car. This is a 1968 Dodge Coronet RT convertible, which, okay, you're like, okay, RT convertible, that's awesome. I mean, it's not just an RT convertible, it's a real Hemi car.
I mean, as far as barn finds go, isn't finding a Hemi, like that's the holy grail, like that's what everybody's looking for, is a real deal. Not just it has a Hemi in it, but a real deal VIN-coded Hemi car.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Hemi cars in general are, you know, top of the top. They only made, I think, 7,000 over the entire lifespan of the car, but this is like one of 7 built Hemi convertibles. It's an automatic on the floor, and it's real. The VIN number is correct. I mean, it's a J code, which in 1968 denotes the Hemi. So yeah, I mean, Hemi cars, I mean, there are a bunch of like 66, you know, 7 Chargers and all that. They're not as desirable. But when you find a Hemi convertible, you know, as to say, the top goes down, the price goes up. This is now in the stratosphere.
So finding this car is like a day that you go to the convenience store and you buy a lottery ticket.
Oh, absolutely, because you will not see another one. This is the holy grail of Hemi finds.
Someone will bring this car back to life. So I mean, there's a ton of just amazing muscle cars here, but like, what are some of the other barn finds that don't really check the muscle box?
For not a muscle car, but is a muscle car, but probably isn't known very well, is a Mercury Cyclone. Most people know about the, you know, the Torinos and all that, but the Cyclones were the companion to the Torino. Sure. And this is a fastback. This isn't quite the, you know, a spoiler or spoiler 2, but it is, you know, the NASCAR influence kind of thing.
Early attempt at beating the wind.
Exactly. So this is a really cool car owned by some friends of mine, and this is a real 428 Super Cobra Jet drag pack car. So it's got, you know, the heavy duty 9-inch, it's got all the bells and whistles.
It's sort of interesting to see the cars sitting in this condition when, you know, in 1969, this was sort of like the technology package. Like this was the cutting edge, fast thing that you wanted. And it's just amazing like how far time has marched on and
But just think, they're still using 4 9-inches to this day in a lot of applications. So, and even the transmissions, I mean, this is a 4-speed because it's Super Cobra Jet. I mean, the 4-speed hasn't changed that much since this time. Yeah, you got fuel injection and all that, but you're absolutely right. This was, for the time, probably the more advanced of the package groups in the Torino and Cyclone spoiler. And that, fortunately enough, leads to another factory interesting car, a 1970 American Motors Rebel Machine. Now this is in the red, white, and blue package, which is really neat. I don't know much about the history of this one. I know that it was found within the last year and it was brought to the show as found, and it's complete. It's got the tack in the hood still, it's got the scoops, the interior is all there. I can even see the red, white, and blue armrests between the seats. And I love these things, but I'm not quite sure what's going on with the stance. It looks like it's almost a straight axle car, but it's not.
the engine's got to be out of it.
It must be out of it.
But still, I mean, this is a low production car. I mean, finding one of these in good shape is hard. Finding one in as built condition is nearly impossible.
I mean, look at those bias ply tires on the front. When was the last time you saw big letter white, you know?
Still hold air.
That still hold air, yeah. I only learned about the heavy Chevy recently, within the last few years. A heavy Chevy was a stripe package, basically on the Chevelle, compete with the Roadrunner and like the GTO Judge and all that. Mm-hmm. It was only available in 71 and 72. I think it was available in the 350 Chevy small block V8, and then you could get a 402, which was really rare. What we're about to show you is a 402 4-speed car. But so when I got the original application, I'm like, okay, heavy Chevy, barn find 402 4-speed, that's awesome. And then they sent me the rest of the story, which if you just pan over here, makes it a lot weirder.
What happened here?
This is a 1972 Chevrolet heavy Chevy. It's a 402 4-speed car that the guy bought new in 1972 and wrecked it in 1973. And you're like, okay, wow, that's crazy. It has it got 8,000-ish miles on the odometer, and he took the car and they put it in the back of their tow lot and never touched it again. It sat in the back of their lot for 51 years or so, but the car is complete front to back with 8,000 miles. And we don't know why. So I believe the story was, unfortunately, the owner passed away a year ago on Thanksgiving or right around there. And the friends bought it from them after that. And they fell in love with barn finds, this display. They immediately sent it to us to be included in the display. And we said, absolutely. And then when we got the whole story, it's like, how could we not have this weird story time capsule muscle car, it's like a forgotten muscle car with a forgotten engine, because you know, the 396 became the 402 and they didn't want to change their badging at the time.
What's amazing about this car is not even the pedigree, it's the determination of a family to keep the car. I mean, how many people would have gone, you know, I don't need this anymore, it's broken, cut ties, send it to the crusher, but like somebody had a vision and they were committed to like keeping this thing in the world in its, you know, heavy Chevy form, and like this car is going to get a second chance because somebody made that choice to not give up on it.
That's right, and it's in very good hands now. It will, I don't know what their plans are for it offhand, but it looks bad, but just think, it's a Chevelle, it's a GM A body, so everything's reproduced for it. And you can see in the video that the car actually is in pretty decent shape other than the front end damage. So I'm not an expert on Chevelles and all that, but you can replace the entire front end on these, I believe, within reason. I know they're full frame cars, but you can get frames, you can get inner fenders, you can get...
Yeah, the parts are out there to give it a second chance.
And it's worth it. Like I said, 402, 4-speed, numbers matching, 8,000 miles. This car is everything a barn finder or an auto archaeologist dreams of.
So a lot of the barn finds in this section are going to have, you know, big engines, be rare muscle cars, rare options, and I kind of like this one a lot because I really, you know, with 2 young kids, I've found a new obsession with wagons, and this is the coolest wagon that I've seen at the show yet.
It's one of the coolest wagons you'll ever see. And you're like, okay, it's a 64 Pontiac Safari wagon. You know, Pontiac Safaris were used on like the NHRA tour, the safety tours and all that.
Safety Safari.
Safety Safari, yeah. So you're like, okay, that's cool. But this is, you know, a little bit later than that, but this is a 64 Pontiac Safari wagon. And it's not even crazy. That's awesome, but it's a 421 tri-power wagon. And you're like, okay, that's incredible. Gets even crazier. It's got the first year, very rare transistorized ignition system. It's like electronic ignition, like the later ones, but it's completely a GM AC Delco setup. They were used on very few GTOs. It was used on Catalina. It was a very rare option. I've only seen one, in my personal travels, I've only seen one other car that had it. Extremely rare, and it's on a 421 tri-power wagon, and then it gets even better. Inside, it's got this weird interior. I've never seen a wagon with bucket seats, automatic on the floor.
So this was like the coolest dad car you could possibly get. I mean, you've got air conditioning, power steering, a tri-power 421, bucket seats in a wagon. I mean, this thing is rad.
If you're interested in the barn find display or anything at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, you can find more information at www.MCACN.com. We're also on Facebook at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals and Instagram. But if you want to learn more about barn finding and my shenaniganry, I'm on all social media under usually the Auto Archaeologist or Auto Archaeology.
Ryan is great at finding some of the hardest to find cars in the world, and for more coverage of the show, head to Hemmings.com.